Sophie Carter gripped the steering wheel tighter as the city lights faded behind her. 29 years old, and she had just walked away from what everyone called the perfect life. Her engagement ring sat in a jewelry box on her kitchen counter, abandoned along with the dream wedding she had spent months planning. 3 days ago, she discovered that her fiancé had been living a double life, complete with another woman in a neighboring state. The betrayal cut deeper than she thought possible. The coastal highway stretched endlessly before her, and Sophie drove without a real destination. She just needed distance from everything familiar, from the pitying looks of friends and the humiliating whispers at her marketing firm. When the elegant silhouette of the Azure Pearl Hotel appeared against the moonlit ocean, something made her take the exit. The building was stunning, with its modern glass architecture reflecting the waves below. She booked a room without checking the price. Tonight, money did not matter. Peace did. The bar and the stranger. After unpacking her small suitcase, Sophie found herself too restless to sleep. The hotel room felt suffocating despite its luxury. At 11:30 at night, she made her way down to the hotel bar, hoping a drink might quiet the storm in her mind. The space was sophisticated yet intimate, with amber lighting that cast everything in a warm glow. Soft piano music drifted through the air, and only a handful of guests occupied the leather seats scattered throughout the room. Behind the polished oak bar stood a man who immediately caught her attention. He was tall, with broad shoulders that filled out his crisp black shirt perfectly. Dark hair fell slightly across his forehead, and a light stubble gave him an approachable ruggedness. But it was his eyes that held her captive when he looked up. Deep brown, intelligent, and carrying a weight that suggested he understood more about the world than most people. "Good evening. What can I get for you tonight?" His voice was smooth, with a natural warmth that made Sophie feel unexpectedly at ease. "Something strong," she replied, sliding onto a bar stool. "Something that helps you forget." A knowing smile played at the corners of his mouth. "One of those nights?" "One of those lives," Sophie corrected, surprised by her own honesty with this stranger. Connection beyond words. He moved with practiced grace, selecting bottles and mixing ingredients with focused precision. His hands were steady and confident, and Sophie found herself mesmerized by the way he worked. There was something almost meditative about his movements, as if he had done this 1,000 times, yet still found satisfaction in getting it exactly right. "I'm Nathan," he said, placing an amber-colored drink in front of her. "And you look like someone who just made a very brave decision." Sophie blinked in surprise. "How would you know that?" "People come to hotel bars for different reasons," Nathan explained, leaning against the counter. "Some are celebrating, some are hiding, and some are running towards something new, even if they don't realize it yet. You have that look in your eyes, like you just jumped off a cliff and are still waiting to see if you can fly." His insight unsettled her in the best way possible. "Sophie," she offered, "and maybe you're right. I just ended an engagement 3 days ago." "His loss," Nathan said, simply, without the usual platitudes people offered. The certainty in his voice made something flutter in her chest. They talked for hours. The conversation flowed with an ease Sophie had never experienced, not even with her ex-fiancé. Nathan asked questions that made her think, shared stories that made her laugh, and listened in a way that made her feel truly heard. He spoke about travel, about finding yourself in unexpected places, about the courage it takes to walk away from the wrong path, even when everyone tells you it is right. The pull of something real. As the clock approached 2 in the morning, Sophie realized they were the only ones left in the bar. The night staff had dimmed the lights further, creating an intimate cocoon around them. She should have felt tired, but instead felt more awake than she had in months. Nathan had a way of looking at her that made her feel seen, not just observed. His attention was complete and genuine. "I should probably let you close up," she said reluctantly, though her body resisted the idea of leaving. "My shift ended an hour ago," Nathan admitted with a slight smile. "I stayed because I wanted to." The confession hung in the air between them, charged with possibility. Sophie's heart beat faster as Nathan came around the bar, eliminating the physical barrier that had separated them all evening. He stood close enough that she could smell his cologne, something woodsy and masculine that made her want to lean closer. "Sophie," he said her name like it meant something. "I know this is forward, and I know you just got out of something painful, but I would very much like to walk you to your room." Every logical part of her brain screamed that this was too fast, too risky, too reckless. But another part, the part that had been sleeping for years, whispered that maybe reckless was exactly what she needed. Maybe perfect strangers could offer something that people you knew forever could not. Honesty, presence, a moment of pure connection without history or expectation. "I'm on the 8th floor," Sophie heard herself say. The elevator ride felt eternal and instantaneous at once. They stood close, not touching, but acutely aware of every breath, every small movement. When the doors opened, Sophie turned to face him, her decision made. She pulled him toward her, and their lips met in a kiss that erased everything else. Nathan responded immediately, his hands gentle on her face as he deepened the kiss. It was not just attraction, though heat blazed between them. It was recognition, as if two lost pieces had suddenly found where they belonged. Sophie woke to sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows of her hotel room. For a moment, she felt peaceful, wrapped in expensive sheets with the memory of the night before warming her skin. Then she reached across the bed and found it empty, cold. Nathan was gone. She sat up quickly, pulling the sheet around herself as she scanned the room. His clothes were no longer scattered across the floor where they had been hastily discarded. No note on the pillow, no sign he had ever been there except for the faint scent of his cologne lingering on the fabric beside her. A hollow feeling settled in her chest, familiar, yet somehow worse than she expected. Sophie had known it was just one night. She had told herself not to expect anything more. But somewhere between their conversations at the bar and the way he had held her like she was precious, she had started to hope. Now that hope felt foolish. She was just another hotel guest to him, another temporary connection in a life full of them. After a long shower that did nothing to wash away her disappointment, Sophie dressed in casual linen pants and a soft blue top. She would check out today, she decided. There was no reason to stay. She could drive back to the city and begin the real work of rebuilding her life. Last night had been beautiful, but it was time to return to reality. An unexpected proposal. The hotel restaurant was elegant and airy, with large windows overlooking the pool and ocean beyond. Sophie chose a quiet table in the corner, ordering coffee and picking at a plate of fresh fruit. She tried not to search for Nathan among the staff moving through the space. He was probably off duty, sleeping after his late shift, or perhaps he worked at a different property entirely. Hotels this size had multiple bars and restaurants. "Excuse me, Miss Carter?" A polished woman in a navy business suit approached her table with a professional smile. "I'm Jennifer Walsh, the operations manager here at the Azure Pearl. Do you have a moment?" Sophie nodded, confused. "Is there a problem with my reservation?" "Not at all," Jennifer assured her, taking the seat across from Sophie. "Actually, I wanted to speak with you about an opportunity. We noticed from your registration that you work in marketing, specifically brand development for luxury experiences. Is that correct?" "Yes," Sophie answered slowly. "I'm a senior marketing director at Prestige Collective. We handle campaigns for high-end hotels and resorts." "Perfect. We're launching a complete rebranding of our Azure Pearl properties, and we're looking for fresh perspective from someone who understands the industry but is not tied to our existing vision. Your background is exactly what we need. Would you be interested in consulting with us on this project?" Sophie blinked, completely caught off guard. "I appreciate the offer, but I'm just here for a few days. I live 3 hours away." "We would make it worth your while," Jennifer continued smoothly. "The contract would be generous, and we could arrange accommodations here at the hotel during the project timeline. It would be approximately 3 months of work. Our owner is very invested in getting this right and has specifically requested we find someone with your expertise." The mention of the owner made Sophie pause. Something about this felt strange, too convenient. But her career had been stagnating for months, stuck in the same patterns at her firm. Maybe this was the universe offering her a genuine escape, a chance to start fresh in more ways than one. "Can I think about it?" Sophie asked. "Of course, we would need an answer by Monday." Jennifer slid a business card across the table. The initial meeting with our owner would be tomorrow morning at 10 if you're available, just to discuss the scope and see if it's a good fit for both parties. After Jennifer left, Sophie sat staring at the card. Part of her wanted to run, to avoid anything that kept her in this place where she had been vulnerable and then abandoned. But another part, the part that had driven through the night seeking change, whispered that she should stay, that she should see where this path led. The unexpected proposal. Monday morning arrived with Sophie dressed in her most professional outfit, a tailored charcoal dress that made her feel armored and capable. Jennifer met her in the lobby and led her through corridors Sophie had not seen before, clearly administrative areas hidden from guest view. They stopped before impressive double doors made of dark wood. "Mr. Stone will see you now," Jennifer said, knocking twice before opening the door. The name registered a split second before Sophie stepped in. Stone. Nathan Stone. The world tilted as she entered an expansive office with panoramic ocean views. And there, rising from behind a sleek glass desk in an impeccably tailored charcoal suit, was Nathan. Not Nathan the bartender, Nathan Stone, owner of the Azure Pearl Hotel chain. Their eyes met, and Sophie saw shock flicker across his face, followed immediately by something that looked like resignation. He had not known she would be here. This meeting had been arranged by his staff without his knowledge of who the candidate was. "Thank you, Jennifer. Please close the door," Nathan said, his voice strained. The door clicked shut, leaving them alone in suffocating silence. Sophie's mind raced, pieces falling into place with sickening clarity. The way he had moved behind that bar with such confidence, his intimate knowledge of the hotel, The first week of working at the Azure Pearl tested every ounce of Sophie's resolve. Nathan had assigned her a beautiful office, 2 doors down from his, with the same stunning ocean views and modern furnishings. The proximity meant she saw him constantly, passing in hallways, sitting across from her in conference rooms, his presence a constant reminder of what had happened between them. He kept his distance as promised, maintaining perfect professionalism during meetings, but Sophie caught him watching her sometimes when he thought she was focused on her laptop. Those looks carried weight, spoke of things left unsaid. She pretended not to notice, burying herself in the rebrand project with fierce determination. The work itself was fascinating. The Azure Pearl chain had 12 properties across the country, each beautiful but lacking a cohesive identity. Sophie dove into research, analyzing their competitor brands, studying guest reviews, interviewing staff members about what made their hotel special. She worked late into the evenings, partly because the project demanded it and partly because it kept her mind off Nathan. On Thursday of her first week, Sophie was reviewing design mock-ups when a soft knock interrupted her concentration. Nathan stood in her doorway holding 2 cups of coffee, his tie loosened and sleeves rolled up after a long day. "Peace offering?" he said, holding up one of the cups. "I remember you take it with cream and 1 sugar." The fact that he remembered such a small detail from their night together made her heart squeeze. Sophie hesitated, then nodded for him to enter. Taking the coffee felt safer than refusing it, less likely to reveal how much his presence still affected her. "Thank you," she said, wrapping her hands around the warm cup. "You did not have to do that." "I wanted to," Nathan said simply, settling into the chair across from her desk. "How is the project going? Jennifer mentioned you have been working incredibly hard." Sophie relaxed slightly, grateful to talk about something safe and professional. She walked him through her initial findings, the themes she was exploring, the emotional connections she wanted to build between guests and the Azure Pearl brand. As she talked, Nathan listened with complete attention, asking insightful questions that showed he truly understood the vision she was creating. "This is brilliant," he said when she finished, genuine admiration in his voice. "You see things I never would have considered. The way you connect emotional experience with brand identity is remarkable." The compliment warmed her more than the coffee. "I love what I do. When it's right, a brand becomes more than marketing. It becomes a promise, an experience that changes how people feel about themselves." "Like how you felt that night at the bar," Nathan said quietly, "when you let yourself be someone new, someone brave enough to start over." The conversation had shifted into dangerous territory. Sophie set down her coffee cup, needing to re-establish boundaries. "Nathan, we agreed to keep this professional." "I know," he said, standing. "I'm sorry. I just wanted you to know that your work here matters. You matter, not because of anything between us, but because of who you are and what you bring to this project." After he left, Sophie sat in the growing darkness of her office, watching the sunset over the ocean. Nathan was making this impossible. Every interaction revealed more layers to him, made him harder to dismiss as just a wealthy man who had made a selfish choice. She saw how he treated his staff with respect, how he remembered details about their lives. She watched him work late into the night just like she did, driven by genuine care for his business rather than just profit. Cracks in the armor. 3 weeks into the project, Sophie had to visit 2 other Azure Pearl properties to understand their unique characteristics. Nathan insisted on accompanying her, arguing that his presence would open doors and ensure she got complete access. Sophie reluctantly agreed, knowing he was right but dreading spending extended time alone with him. They flew to the mountain resort first, a stunning property nestled in pine forests with views of snow-capped peaks. During the site visit, Sophie watched Nathan interact with his employees. He knew many by name, asked about their families, listened to their concerns about operational challenges. This was not the performance of a CEO trying to look good. This was genuine connection. That evening, they had dinner at the resort's restaurant to evaluate the dining experience. The meal was excellent, and conversation flowed naturally as they discussed the property's strengths and weaknesses. Sophie found herself laughing at Nathan's stories about disastrous hotel launches and learning experiences from his early days running the company. "I had no idea what I was doing when my father died. I was 25, fresh out of business school, and suddenly responsible for an empire. I made so many mistakes that first year. Trusted the wrong people, ignored good advice, almost ran us into the ground." "But you figured it out," Sophie said, seeing the vulnerability in his expression. "You built something remarkable." "I learned that success is not about being perfect. It's about caring enough to keep trying, to listen, to admit when you are wrong." His eyes met hers with clear intention. This applies to business and to personal relationships. Sophie felt her defenses wavering. The man sitting across from her bore little resemblance to the careless deceiver she had built up in her mind. He was complicated, flawed, but fundamentally good. She excused herself quickly, needing space before she said something she would regret. The breaking point. Back at the Azure Pearl headquarters, Sophie threw herself into finalizing the rebrand presentation. The work was nearly complete, and she would present to Nathan and his executive team in 1 week. After that, her contract would end. She would return to her old life, and this strange chapter would close. The thought should have brought relief. Instead, it left her feeling hollow. On Thursday evening, Sophie was working late when raised voices carried through the walls from Nathan's office. She tried to ignore it, but the argument grew louder. Finally, curiosity won. She stepped into the hallway just as Nathan's door flew open and a well-dressed older woman stormed out, her face tight with anger. "You are making a terrible mistake, Nathan. This company needs strategic partnerships, not your romantic distractions." "My personal life is not your concern, Victoria," Nathan replied firmly from his doorway. "Everything you do affects this company. Your father would be ashamed of how you are jeopardizing our reputation." With that parting shot, Victoria strode past Sophie without acknowledgement and disappeared down the corridor. Nathan stood frozen, his face pale. When he saw Sophie, something in him seemed to break. Without a word, he turned back into his office. Sophie knew she should return to her own work, maintain the distance she had fought so hard to preserve. Instead, she followed him inside and closed the door. Nathan stood at his windows, hands braced against the glass, his entire body radiating tension. "That was my Aunt Victoria. She sits on our board of directors and never misses an opportunity to remind me that I am not my father." "What did she mean about romantic distractions?" Sophie asked softly. He turned to face her, and the raw emotion in his eyes took her breath away. "The board found out about you, about us. Someone saw us having dinner at the mountain property and made assumptions. Victoria thinks I'm risking the company's reputation by being involved with a consultant." "But we're not involved," Sophie said, though the words felt like lies. "Are we not?" Nathan crossed the space between them in 3 strides, stopping just inches away. "Because I think about you constantly. I lie awake remembering how it felt to hold you. I look for excuses to see you, to hear your voice. If that is not being involved, I don't know what is." Sophie's heart hammered against her ribs. "Nathan, we cannot do this. It's too complicated. There's too much history, too many reasons this won't work." "Or maybe those are excuses because you're as scared as I am," he challenged gently. "Scared that what we felt that first night was real.
scared that if we try this and it fails, we'll lose something we have never found anywhere else. His words cut through every defense she had built. Sophie pressed her hands against his chest, feeling his heart racing as fast as hers.